Father, I was the one who decided who lived and who died. That was the first thing I heard when he entered the confessional that night. There was no compliance. There was no hesitation. Just this dry phrase, pronounced with a coldness that cut me as a blade. I was alone in the sacristy, organizing the next morning mass vestments when I heard the steps. It was almost 11 at night. The church should be closed, but I forgot to lock the side door, a mistake I make up at once, especially on long nights when exhaustion drags me into myself. The church was immersed in that heavy silence that only exists in empty sacred places, a silence that is not absence of sound but presence of something invisible. The altar candles had already erased. Only the weak light of the tabernacle lamp was left, that eternal flame that never goes out, casting long shadows by the stone columns. The smell of burnt wax still hovered in the air, sweet, almost nauseating, mixed with the damp odor of ancient wood and the incense trail of the afternoon mass. These aromas attached to the walls of the church as invisible ghosts, impregnated with each crack, each bench, each carpet spent by time. The steps echoed through the side corridor, firm, decided. It was not someone who came in a mistake or sought casual refuge. They were steps of those who knew exactly where he was going. I closed the sacristy drawer and walked toward the confessional. My own steps sounded stuffy by the faded red carpet. I felt the cold of the night climbing down the rocks of the floor, penetrating the sole of the sandals, the wood of the confessional range when I sat down. A sound that I know by color, 32 years listening to this same ranger, 32 years sitting in this same place, listening to the secrets that people can't carry alone. On the other side of the grid, I heard his breath even before seeing him, irregular, heavy, as if they were choking inside. I waited. I let the silence do your job. Sometimes people need a few seconds to gather courage, to find the first words, to start pouring the poison that is killing inside. But he didn't wait. "Good night, Father," he said, with a controlled but tense voice. "I know it's late. Sorry. God has no time," I said, keeping the calm I learned to force after so many years. "And I don't. Enter, my son." I heard the sound of clothes adjusting. He was settling in the bench on the other side. I turned my face slightly toward the grid. The weak light that came from the corridor allowed me to see only fragments from him. A piece of forehead, the brightness of the eyes. His hands crossed over his knees. He wore white shirt, impeccable, well passed, starched collar, but his hands were shaking. "Father," he started, and then stopped. I waited. He took a deep breath, held the air. He let go slowly. "Father, I was the one who decided who lived and who died." The phrase fell like a stone at the bottom of a well, dry, definitive. My stomach contracted. I squeezed my fingers against the rosary that I always keep hanging in the pocket of the cassock. The wooden bills were spent by use, smooth, hot against the palm of the hand. I didn't answer immediately. I let the sentence be suspended in the air. Sometimes the echo of their own words is what makes the person continue, and it worked. "Are you a doctor?" I asked, keeping my voice low. He nodded, just a head movement, and then confirmed it in a low voice. "I am. Surgeon. Work in a public hospital." "How long?" 15 years. His voice was strange, too controlled, as if reading a medical report. Technical tone, almost distant, but the breath continued to deliver the panic. 15 years saving lives, he continued, and paused. "At least, and that's what I thought I did." I noticed that he squeezed his own hands. The fingers were intertwined hard, the white nodes, white. "Father, have you seen a trauma room?" he asked, without waiting for an answer. "It's chaos, blood, screams, people running, alarms, begging appliances, and in the midst of all this, we have to decide, fast, without thinking too much." He paused. "There are nights that arrive 3, 4 poly-traumatized at the same time. Serious accidents, bullets, stab wounds, stabbing, people in pieces, priest, literally in pieces, and we have to choose. You have to decide who goes to the table first, who is most likely to survive. It is protocol, it is war medicine, screening, save those who are most likely." He took a deep breath again, swallowed hard. "But that's not confession, right? This is the work. This is expected. We take an oath, swear, save lives. But no one says that to save one. Sometimes you have to let another die. No one prepares us for that." I waited. I let him continue at his own pace. "So why are you here?" I asked, choosing each word carefully. "If it's a protocol, if it's work, why look for confession?" He did not respond immediately. I heard the sound of fabric moving. He rubbed his hands on each other. Pure nervousness. The kind of gesture that denounces what the voice tries to hide. "Because," he started, and crashed. Silence. And then in a lower voice, almost a whisper, "Because 3 months ago I let someone die, and it was not a protocol." My stomach turned around. I closed my eyes. I squeezed the rosary harder. "Continue," he said, keeping his voice firm. He took a deep breath. He seemed to be gathering strength, or courage, or perhaps just accepting that once said, those words could no longer come back. It was a Wednesday, he began, with even lower voice. Common duty. Tiring. I was exhausted, priest. I had just left a 6-hour surgery. A man in his early 40s with internal bleeding, spleen drilling, complicated, but I managed to save. I closed. Sutre. I left in the ICU. I went to the restroom to have coffee. He paused. I heard the sound of a trembling breath. I hadn't even finished the first cup when the intercom called. Urgency. Polytraumatized. Motorcycle accident. They descended him straight to the trauma room. Another silence. Longer. I ran down. I put the gloves. I entered the room. The team was already preparing. I looked at the stretcher. I saw the body. Blood. Abrasions. Exposed fracture on the left leg. But it was something treatable. Nothing absurd. Nothing I had not seen 1,000 times. He paused again. And when he spoke again, the voice was different. Colder. And then, I looked at his face. I felt the air heavier. I leaned a little closer to the grid. And I recognized. I waited. Who was it? I asked. Already knowing that the answer would change everything. He took a long time. When he finally answered, the voice came out. The man who destroyed my family. I closed my eyes. How many times have I heard this sentence? How many versions of hatred, revenge, and pain have gone through this grid? But something in this confession was different. He was not seeking acquittal. He was delivering a weight. And I still didn't know the actual size of this weight. What did he do? I asked, knowing I needed the full story. He inspired deeply, held the air. He let go slowly. 8 years ago, he began. This man ran over my sister. Pause. She was crossing the street. Pedestrian range. Red signal for him. But he advanced. Drunk. High speed. He hit her in front. Her body flew almost 5 meters. And he didn't even brake. Fled. His voice climbed a tone. Contained anger. But soon it returned to control. She survived. Narrowly. For very little. It spent 3 months hospitalized. 2 spine surgeries. 1 in the basin. Permanent sequelae. Never again walked right again. Use cane to this day. Lost job. The groom dropped her 6 months later. He said he couldn't handle it. Her life collapsed. Completely. He paused. It took a deep breath. And the guy? The driver? He took 2 years of alternative penalty. 2 years, priest. 2 years providing community service. Because it was a primary defendant. Because it had good antecedents. Because it hired an expensive lawyer. I heard the bank ranger. He was moving. Restless. I saw him in the news. I saw his face out of the forum. Smiling. Smiling. Priest. As if nothing had happened. I decorated every trace of that face. Every detail. And I swore. I swore to myself that if this man crossed my way again, I would pay. I felt a shiver up the spine. And then, I continued, completing the sentence for him. He appeared on his stretcher. Yes. Silence. Father. I looked at him. I saw the injuries. I saw that he had a chance. The fracture was severe but treatable. Internal bleeding, yes, but controllable. It was something I solved with my eyes closed, literally. He crashed. It took a deep breath. Continued. But I pretended. I examined. I ordered the routine exams, radiography, tomography. I gave the team orders to prepare the standard protocol. But I knew that if I waited another 10-15 minutes, it would not survive. Internal bleeding was silent, slow, but fatal. My mouth was dry. And you waited, I said, without asking. I waited. The word fell like lead. I pretended to be prioritizing another patient. I told the team that he was stable. That could wait. The nurse questioned me. He said the vital signs were falling. But I am the doctor. Priest. My word is final. No one questions. He swallowed hard. The sound echoed through the wood of the confessional. I stayed outside the room, looking at the display, seeing the monitors, seeing the pressure drop. The beat slows down. And I did nothing. Pause. 15 minutes later, he had cardiac arrest. I entered. I shouted blue code. I tried to revive, massage, adrenaline, paddle bilial, but it was too late. I knew it was too late. His voice was shaky now. I declared death at 11:47 p.m. The silence came back, but this time it was different. It was not weight. It was the emptiness of those who said everything and is now naked before himself. When I took a deep breath, I closed my eyes. I felt the weight of confession. I thought about the words I should say, in what the doctrine sends, in what God expects. But something arrested me, something in the way he told. He spoke like routine, but his breath denounced fear. He was counting like a procedure, technical, clinical, but his body shouted something else, blame, fear, or regret. And then I remembered the initial phrase. I was the one who decided who lived and who died. It was not once, it was not a mistake. It was in the present, in general, as a routine, admitted to letting lives out for their own choice. The word, lives, in the plural. I looked at his hands again through the grid. They were shaking, but there was something else. A brand on the right-hand index finger. Small, rounded, like a cigarette burn. Recent. Do you smoke? I asked, breaking the silence. He seemed confusing for changing the subject. No. Why? I pointed discreetly through the grid. Your hand, the index finger. He looked at his own hand, saw the mark, and then he looked away quickly. Too fast. It was an accident, he said, defensive. In the hospital. Hot scalpel. I leaned against it, but the tone has changed. It was tense, too controlled. It was not an accident, and for the first time I realized that man was not just there to confess a death. I left the confessional with the feeling that some decisions weigh more than any scalpel. This phrase was not yet real, but I felt at that moment that at the end of the night, it would be. I took a deep breath. I chose the words carefully. My son, I started, keeping my voice calm. You said that you decided to have you lived and who died. I didn't say once. I didn't say I made a mistake. You said in general, as if it were routine. He froze. The silence was dense, heavy. It was just once, Father, he said, but his voice failed at the end. He is sure? Silence. I heard his breath accelerate. I saw your hands close on fists. I saw the whole body contract. And then, in an almost inaudible voice, he whispered, There's one more thing I need to tell. There's one more thing I need to tell. The phrase was suspended in the air like smoke. Dense. Heavy. I didn't answer immediately. I learned that at these times, silence is my ally. Let the person marinate in their own words. Let the weight of what has not yet been said to grow until it becomes unbearable. He continued with his hands crossed, but now I rubbed the thumbs against each other. Small movement. Nervous. The kind of gesture people do when they are trying to calm down and failing miserably. Continue, he said, keeping his voice firm. He inspired deep, held the air, and then it released everything at once. It wasn't the first time. I felt the stomach freezing. It wasn't, I repeated, leaving the phrase unfinished. It wasn't the first time I let someone die. The confessional seemed to shrink. The air got heavier, more dense, as if the wooden walls were closing. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath, and I asked, How many times? He did not respond immediately. I heard his sound swallowing hard. I saw that he was looking down. To your own hands, for that brand on the index finger. 2, he said finally. Twice. I opened my eyes. I turned a little more toward the grid. I tried to see his face better through the cracks of the wood, but he kept his head down. Tell me about again, I asked, keeping my tone calm. He hesitated. It took a deep breath, and started. It was 1.5 years ago, before the motorcycle accident. First of all, pause. It was a Sunday night, quiet on duty, almost empty. I was in the restroom when a call arrived. Woman, 53 years, acute myocardial infarction, brought by the daughter. He spoke slowly now. Every measure measured, as if reliving the scene. I went down. I entered the room. I saw the patient on the stretcher. Pale skin, cold sweat, chest pain, classic. I ordered electrocardiogram. I confirmed infarction, but there was still time. If we got it fast, she would have a chance. He paused. He rubbed his hands again. The daughter was next door, crying, desperate, begging for me to save my mother. And I looked at the woman's face, and I recognized. My heart accelerated. Where did you recognize from? From the hospital where my sister was hospitalized. 8 years ago. I waited. This woman was a chief nurse in the orthopedic sector, and she treated my sister very badly, Father. Very badly. His voice climbed a tone, contained anger. My sister was suffering, with absurd pain. I begged for more analgesic, and this woman, she said my mother was exaggerating. That was freshness, that there were people in a worse situation. She treated her like a nuisance, as if her pain didn't matter. He took a deep breath, tried to control himself. One day my sister had a crisis. He shouted in pain, and this nurse entered the room and said in front of everyone, Stop by Chalik. You're not the only one here. Silence. My sister never forgot that. It was traumatized. To this day there are nightmares with that voice. He paused again. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, and there she was, in my stretcher, in my hand, depending on me. I felt a chill climb through the spine. What did you do? I pretended to be dealing. I ordered the exams, but it was delayed. Asked for a second unnecessary opinion. He said he needed to confirm something. The daughter became more and more nervous. I asked why it was taking so long, and I said I was doing my best. He crashed, but it wasn't. I was waiting for her heart to give up. My throat was dry. And gave up? Yes. 22 minutes after the entrance. Cardiac arrest. I tried to revive, but it was late. I declared death at 10:14 p.m. The silence came back, but this time, it was different. Colder, heavier. I took a deep breath. I tried to soothe what I was hearing. 2 deaths, 2 deliberate choices, 2 revenge disguised of medicine. I looked at his hands again. That brand on the index finger, small, circular, like a burn. This mark on your finger, I started, pointing discreetly. You said it was a hot scalpel. Accident. He froze. He was. When did it happen? He hesitated. There are 2 weeks, and it hurts? A little. It's already healing. I leaned closer to the grid. I lowered my voice. My son, surgical scalpels don't get hot enough to leave a mark like that. Not that way. Not that way. I saw his body contract. The hands closed in fists. I leaned against. Don't lie to me, I interrupted firmly. He already lied enough. Here, within this confessional, you cannot lie. Not for me. Not even to God. Silence. He took a deep breath, trembling. It was purposeful. Purposeful how? He was slow to answer. When it did, the voice was almost inaudible. I burned myself, with a cigarette, alone, in the hospital bathroom. I waited. Why? I asked. Because I needed to feel. I needed to remember that I can still feel pain, that I am still human. The confession came out broken, fragmented. After the second time, after I let that woman die, I started to have nightmares. I saw the faces. I heard the monitors begging. I saw the families crying. And I didn't feel anything. Nothing, Father. As if it had turned off inside. He rubbed his marked finger, so I burned myself, to see if it still worked, if you could still feel something. I closed my eyes. I felt the weight of that confession. It wasn't just guilt. It was empty. Absence. The kind of thing that erodes inside until there is nothing left. And it worked? I asked. Did you feel? He nodded. I felt. It hurt. It hurt a lot. And for a few seconds, I felt alive again. Silence. And then he added in an even lower voice, but the pain passed, and the void came back. I took a deep breath. I tried to organize the thoughts. 2 deaths. Both premeditated. Both disguised as medical failure. Both linked to people who somehow hurt him or his family. But there was something wrong. Something that didn't fit. You said you have been working for 15 years as a surgeon, I started, choosing the words carefully. 15 years saving lives. And all this time, just these twice? He didn't answer. Only those twice did you find someone who had hurt you or your family? I insisted. Only 2? Silence. My son, this hospital where you work, is it big? Yes. One of the largest in the city. How many patients pass by every week? Hundreds. Sometimes over 1,000. And in 15 years, only 2 of these people had any connection with you? He continued in silence. I leaned closer to the grid. I lowered my voice even more. Or are you telling me just the ones you recognized? I saw his body tremble, slightly, but it was there. Father, how many? I asked firmly. 2, he repeated, but his voice failed. He is sure? Silence. And then, almost in a whisper, there was a notebook. I felt the blood freezing. A notebook? He nodded. It took a deep breath and started. After my sister was run over, after seeing that man leaves court smiling, I was obsessed. I started to store names. People who hurt others and went unpunished. People that justice did not reach. Pause. I wrote down on my cell phone. Names, photos, descriptions, cases I saw in the news, things that happened in the city, aggressors, rapists, driver-s drunk, people who destroyed lives and didn't pay for it. He rubbed his face with his hands, and every time one of these names appeared in the hospital, I knew. I checked. Check it out. And if it was the right person, he didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to. How many names? I asked, feeling my stomach to turn. In the beginning, about 20, 30, but I was adding, searching, seeking. How many now? Silence. How many, my son? 143. The answer fell like a bomb. 143 names. 143 marked people watched, waiting. And how many of these? I started, but I locked it. He understood the question even without me ending. 2, he said. Only 2 showed up. The man who ran over my sister and the nurse. I took a deep breath. I tried to sue. Where is this notebook now? On the cell phone. Blocked. With password. Does anyone know more? No. No one. Silence. I looked at him through the grid. I saw the face partially illuminated by the weak light of the corridor. He was crying. Silent tears coming down. Father, I know what I did was wrong, he said, in a choked voice. I know, but when I looked at those faces, when I saw the people who destroyed lives and went unpunished, I felt that it was justice, that I was doing the right one. He cleaned the tears with the back of his hand. But now I don't know anymore. I look in the mirror and do not recognize who is looking back. I closed my eyes. I felt the weight of all that. It wasn't just guilt. It was something much bigger, deeper, more dangerous. He had become a judge, jury, executor, all disguised as medicine. You need to destroy this list, he said firmly. Now, today, he nodded. I'll do that, I promise. But something in his voice bothered me. Something told me he wouldn't do it. Is there anything else, I asked? Something you haven't told me yet? He hesitated. He looked down, and then, in an almost inaudible voice, he whispered, there is a name on the list that I can't take. My blood froze. Why? He took a deep breath, trembling. Because this person will appear in the hospital shortly. Pause. And when it appears, I'll be there. Because this person will appear in the hospital shortly. And when it appears, I'll be there. The phrase was suspended between us as a threat, as a promise. I felt a cold climb through the spine. My throat was dry. I squeezed the rosary so hard that wood accounts marked the palm of my hand. Who is it? I asked, trying to keep my voice firm, but I heard the tremor in my own words. He did not respond immediately. He kept looking down, to the hands, for that circular brand on the index finger, the burn he himself inflicted to feel that he was still human. You won't understand, he said finally. Try. Silence. He took a deep breath, held the air, and when he let go, it was as if he was releasing something he had been holding for a long time. My brother-in-law. The word fell like stone. I waited. I let him continue at his own pace. The groom who dropped my sister, he continued, a most controlled voice now. 6 months after the accident, he said he couldn't handle it. That was very difficult. That needed to move on. Pause. But the truth was different. He rubbed his face with his hands. I saw that I was shaking. He already had another woman. I was with her even before the accident. My sister discovered later, by chance. He saw messages on his cell phone when they were still together. He was cheating on her over a year ago. His voice climbed a tone. Anger. Pure anger. And when she confronted him, do you know what he said? He said the accident was a relief, that now he had an excuse to end without looking like the villain. I felt my stomach turn. My sister went into depression. Deep. Tried suicide twice. Twice, father. I who found her the first time. In the bathroom. Cut pulses. Blood everywhere. He paused. It took a deep breath. Trembling. I managed to save her. I took it to the hospital. Psychiatric hospitalization. 3 months. And when she left, she was no longer the same person. I lived in medicine. Lifeless. Dismissed in the eyes. Silence. And he married the other. Had 2 children. Perfect life. As if nothing had happened. As if it had not destroyed a person. He closed his fists tightly. This is the name I can't take from the list, priest. Because he will appear. How do you know? I asked. Because he has a heart problem. Congenital. I discovered by chance. A common friend commented. He said he will need to have surgery. Shortly. A cardiac surgery. My blood froze. And you'll be there. I'll be there. The sentence was not a question. It was statement. It was sure. Father, I know where he will operate. I know the doctor you are going to do. And I will offer myself to help. To watch. It is common. Medium ecos help colleagues all the time. He paused. And when he's at the table, when he's open, vulnerable, I'll be 2 steps from him. I closed my eyes. I felt the weight of that confession. It was no longer about the past. It was about the future, about something that has not yet happened, but was planned, calculated. You're planning to kill him, I said bluntly. I won't kill, he corrected with a coldness that scared me. I'll let it happen. It's different. It's no different, I said firmly. In God's eyes, it's no different. But it's in the eyes of the law, he countered. Medical failure, surgical complication. It happens. No one will question. He spoke with a technical security that shivered me, as if describing a routine procedure. How many times have you thought about it? I asked. Every day, since I found out he was going to operate. How long have you known? 2 weeks. And then everything fitted. The burning on the finger, the self-mutilation, the emptiness he described. That's why you got burned, I said. It was not just to feel pain, it was because you knew you were going to do this again. And I was afraid of feeling nothing. Silence. He didn't deny it. I took a deep breath. I tried to organize the thoughts. He was not seeking acquittal. He was looking for, what, permission? Validation? Or just someone to share the weight before carrying alone? I looked at him through the grid. I saw the face partially lit. He was no longer crying. The eyes were dry, cold, determined, admitted to letting lives out for their own choice. The phrase of the mini-historia echoed in my mind. He was not confessing guilt. I was confessing power, the power to decide, to choose, to be God for a few minutes. And now I was about to do it again. When is surgery? I asked, knowing that I needed this information. 5 days from now, 5 days. And have you decided? I insisted. Have you decided that you are going to do that? He was slow to answer. When it did, the voice was low. I don't know. That's why I'm here. Do you want me to tell you it's right? I asked, with a hardness that I rarely use. Do you want me to acquit you before you even commit the act? No, So what do you want? Silence. He rubbed his face, sighed, and then he said in a tired voice, I want someone to stop me, because I can't stop myself alone. The confession was brutal in its honesty. He wanted to do it, but I didn't want to. He was stuck between revenge and consciousness, between anger and emptiness. You can choose not to be there, I said. You can refuse. You can say you are busy. That has another commitment. I tried, he admitted. 3 times this week I took the phone to call the colleague and refuse, but I couldn't. Something holds me. What holds you? The image of my sister, in the bathroom, with the wrists cut, calling his name, begging him to come back. His voice broke at the end. She almost died because of him, Father. Almost. And he is living as if nothing had happened. Happy family, career, health, all. He hit the fist in the bench. Once. Dry. Where is justice in this? Justice is not yours to give, I said firmly. Never has it been. But God did nothing, he countered. 8 years. 8 years I prayed. I asked. I begged for something to happen to him, so that he paid. And nothing. Nothing, Father. God did not move a finger. So you decided to become God. The phrase came out harder than I intended, but it was right. He froze. He looked at me through the grid, and for the first time, I saw something different in his eyes. It was not anger. It was not empty. It was fear. Fear of yourself. I don't want to be that, he whispered. I don't want. But when I look at him, when I imagine him at the table, I feel peace. As if finally things were to balance. I closed my eyes. I felt the weight of each word. Peace, I repeated. Do you call it peace? I call justice. It's not justice. It is revenge. And revenge never brings peace. Only more empty. Silence. He looked down. Finger marked, and rubbed the scar. So what do I do, Father? How do I delete what is inside me? You don't erase, I said. You choose not to feed. He laughed. A bitter laugh, without humor. Easy to speak, hard to do. I never said it would be easy. Silence again. And then he said something that froze me to the bones. There's one thing I haven't told you yet. My heart fired. What? He hesitated. It took a deep breath, and continued. When I let those 2 die, the man on the motorcycle and the nurse, I didn't feel remorse. Pause. At the time I felt satisfaction, as if correcting something wrong, as if doing the right one. He rubbed his hands. But then, days later, I started to have dreams. What kind of dreams? Dreams where I was at the table, where I was the patient, and someone was on top of me, deciding, waiting, letting me die. His voice got lower. And you know what was worse? In the dream, I understood. I understood why the person was doing that, because I deserved it. He paused. And when I woke up, I wondered, did they deserve it too? Did I really have the right? I opened my eyes. I turned completely to him. And the answer? He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw tears. I don't know anymore. And the confessional was absolutely silent. Only the sound of our breaths. Of it, irregular. Mine, controlled. I looked at him. I really looked. I saw a broken man, divided, half still a doctor, half becoming something that he couldn't even name. And then I realized something. You said you have 143 names on the list. I started. Yes, and only 2 have appeared so far. Yes, but you already knew, when you did the list, you already knew your brother-in-law would need surgery, wasn't it? Silence. And then he confirmed. You knew, from the beginning, from the first name. My blood froze. The whole list, it was just to disguise him. He didn't answer, but I didn't need to. I understood. All those names, all those faces, they were just smoke curtain, distraction. The target has always been one, the brother-in-law, and the other 2, just practice. My God, I whispered. He covered his face with his hands, and finally, collapsed, sobbed, high, without control. I didn't want that, he repeated between the sobs. I didn't want to become that, but I can't stop. I can't, Father. I am unable. I left the confessional with the feeling that some decisions weigh more than any scalpel. The phrase was not yet real, but I knew it would soon be, because this man was holding something that was too big, too heavy, and I didn't know if I could save him. Is there anything else? I asked, fearing the answer. Something you haven't told me yet? He cleaned the tears. It took a deep breath, and then, in an almost inaudible voice, the colleague who will do the surgery, the heart surgeon, he doesn't know that the patient and I have history. Pause. But do you know what's worse? I waited. I already lied to him. He said he knew the patient, that we were longtime friends, and that's why he asked me to be in the room, to give emotional support. He laughed. Bitter, emotional support. And then he added with a coldness that cut me, he will give me full access. Be by the table, a few centimeters from his open heart. He will give me full access. Be by the table, a few centimeters from his open heart. The words echoed by the confessional, cold, calculated, finals. I felt the weight of it all collapse over me. 32 years listening to confessions, 32 years holding secrets. But that was different, because it was not past. It was future. It was something that could still be prevented. 5 days, I repeated, more for myself than for him. In 5 days, you will be in that room, and you will have to choose. Yes. And you still don't know what you are going to do? Silence. He rubbed his hands again. I saw through the grid that his fingers trembled. The mark of the burn looked darker in the weak light. No, he admitted finally. I still don't know. I took a deep breath. I closed my eyes. I tried to find the right words, those that could save it, save you from yourself. But before I could talk, he continued, but there's one thing I need to tell you, something that changes everything. My stomach contracted. What? He hesitated. I saw that I looked down, to your own hands, as if seeking courage on the lines of the palm. The real reason why I want to do that. I waited. My heart was beating too strong, too high. It's not just because he abandoned my sister, he continued, with his voice now. It's not just because he betrayed her, or because he said the accident was a relief. Pause. It's because he asked her to die. I felt the blood freeze in the veins. Like this, he took a deep breath, trembling, and started to tell. In my sister's second suicide attempt, she wasn't alone. He was there. My throat was dry. She told me 3 months later, when it left the psychiatric hospitalization, he said he had taken the pills alone, but it wasn't true. He was at her house that night. His voice began to break. They had fought. He had gone to get his last things, clothes, documents, and she begged him to stay on your knees, crying, begging. Pause. And do you know what he did? He laughed at her face, and he said, you should have died in that accident. It would have been better for everyone. I felt my stomach turn. My sister collapsed, fell to the floor. I couldn't breathe, and he only took his things and left her there, alone, destroyed. He rubbed his face with his hands. 20 minutes later, she took the pills, all, 2 entire Rivotril cards, and called him to say goodbye, to say he was going to do what he had asked. My heart fired, and he hung up, blocked her number, and went to sleep. Absolute silence. I found her, 2 hours later. Luckily, I had gone to get some shopping. I found it strange the door to be open. I entered, and I saw her on the living room floor, unconscious, foam in the mouth, purple skin. His voice was shaking now, completely out of control. I took to the hospital, gastric washing, ICU, almost died again. And when she finally woke up, she told me everything. He paused. It took a deep breath, tried to recompose. And do you know what is worse? She made me promise I wasn't going to do anything. That was not going to tell anyone, because she still loved him. He still loved him, priest. After all, I closed my eyes. I felt the weight of each word, the horror, the pain, the impotence. And you kept it? I asked, almost in a whisper. How long? 4 years? 4 years. 1,400 days carrying it alone. Why didn't you go to the police? Why didn't you report it? Because he did nothing technically illegal, he replied with bitterness. He didn't give her the pills, did not force, just suggested, and hung up the phone. This is not a crime. It's just cruelty, he laughed, a dry laugh, without humor. And justice does not punish cruelty. Silence. I looked at him through the grid. I saw the face marked by pain, for the years of silence, of contained anger. And then I understood. You're not doing it just for your sister, I said. You're doing it for you, because you promised to do nothing, and this promise is killing you inside. He froze. You feel guilty, I continued. Guilty for not acting, for letting him live quietly all these years, for keeping her secret. Tears began to go down his face. Yes, he whispered. Yes. Every day I hate myself for not doing anything, for respecting her request, because in the meantime, he was out there, living, smiling, happy. He wiped the tears with the sleeve of his shirt. And she keeps trying to kill herself. Every week I have to call her, to make sure it's still alive, to make sure you have not taken more pills. That did not cut the wrists again. His voice was completely broken now. She calls me at 3 in the morning, crying, saying his name, begging me to bring him back, and I can't do anything, I can't. He punched the bank. 1, 2, 3. Until now. The words were suspended in the air, heavy, definitive. Now I can do something, he continued with a cold determination. Now he'll be at my table, in my hand, and I will be able to end it. I opened my eyes. I turned completely to him. And do you think this will save your sister? I asked firmly. Do you think killing him will bring her back? No. So why? Because while he's alive, she'll never be able to move on. Never. He is the ghost who pursues her. And I need to end this ghost. I closed my eyes again. I felt the weight of his pie, of rationalization, of the justification that he built stone by stone to transform revenge into salvation. He spoke like routine, but his breath denounced fear. The phrase of the mini-historian has returned to my mind. He spoke with conviction, with determination, but his body shouted something else. Fear, doubt, horror at yourself, admitted to letting lives out for their own choice. And now I was about to do it again, for the third time, but this time it would be different, because this time it would not be an opportunity. It would be premeditation. It would be murder, in the first degree. You won't save her, I said, choosing each word carefully. You will destroy yourself, and when she finds out, and she'll find out, you'll lose her too. She won't find out. Go. People always find out. Not if it is perfect. There is no perfect one. Silence. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something different in his eyes. It was not anger. It was not determination. It was despair. Desperation of those who have decided but still seek someone to say that it is wrong. Father, he started with a weak voice. Tell me that there is another way. Tell me you have another way to end this. There is, I said immediately. You don't go to that surgery, you refuse. He says he's sick. That has a commitment, anything, and you never look at that list again. Never again. And he is still alive. Yes. And my sister keeps suffering. Yes. But you don't become a killer. He laughed. Bitter. I'm already. No. You let two people die. It is different from killing. Not to me. Silence. And then he said something that cut me or even the bones. Do you know what I think when I look in the mirror, priest? I think, this is the face of a man who killed two people, and it will kill one more. This is who I am now. He paused. And do you know what is worse? I don't hate this face. I don't feel disgusted. I feel relief. My blood froze. Relief? Relief because I'm finally doing something. Finally, I am no longer powerless. Finally, I have control. He looked at me through the grid. You don't understand, priest, when that man hit my sister. When the court let him go free. When this bastard told her to kill herself. I felt powerless. Useless. As if I couldn't do anything to protect who I love. Pause. But now I can. And I go. The phrase fell like a sentence. And I knew. At that moment, I knew. He had already decided. No matter what I said. No matter how many times I cited the scriptures or spoke of salvation, he was going to do. In 5 days he was going to be in that room and was going to let that man die. I took a deep breath. I felt the weight of all that, the weight of the secret, the weight of impotence. Why could I do? Break confession? Denounce? Prevent? No, I couldn't, because within this confessional, everything is sacred, everything is protected by the bond between man and God, and I was just the bridge, the intermediary, the guardian of secrets he should never carry. I left the confessional with the feeling that some decisions weigh more than any scalpel. The phrase was not yet real, but I already felt her weight forming inside me, like a tumor, growing up, spreading. I looked at him once more, and I asked the only thing I still have to ask. Is there anything, something you haven't told me yet? Something I need to know before you get out of here? He hesitated. For long seconds it was absolutely silent, and then, in an almost inaudible voice, he whispered, there is one thing that changes everything I told you. My heart fired. What? He took a deep breath. He closed his eyes and said, my sister, she doesn't want to live anymore. She told me last week that she can't take it anymore, that we'll try again. And this time you'll be sure it works. Pause. And do you know what she asked me? I waited, feeling the horror grow. She asked me to leave, not to prevent, not to save her once more. Tears went down his face. And I promised. I promised that if she really wanted to go, I wouldn't hold on. He looked at me, red eyes, lost. So tell me, Father, if I let this man live, and my sister kills herself, who is the real killer, he or me? The question was suspended between us. No answer, without acquittal, no way out. If I let this man live, and my sister kills herself, who is the real killer, he or me? The question was suspended between us, heavy, no answer, like a stone thrown into a deep-bottomed well. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. I felt the weight of that impossible dilemma. 2 lives, a choice, and any decision would be a conviction. How long have we been silent? I don't know. Maybe a minute, maybe 10. Time loses meaning within the confessional when words are too great. When I opened my eyes again, he was still looking at me, waiting, not for acquittal, not by permission, but for something I couldn't give, an answer. Father, he began, his voice exhausted, tell me what to do, please. I looked at him through the grid. I saw the face marked, the deep, dark circles, the red eyes, a man who spent 15 years saving lives and was now stuck in a choice that would make him lose his soul anyway. I can't tell you what to do, I said, choosing each word carefully. I can't make that decision for you, but God can, through you. I shook my head slowly. God has already given you the answer. You know what it is. I always knew. From the moment you decided to make that list, from the first name, he lowered his head. You won't kill, I continued, in a firm voice. There is no exception. There is no but. There is no context that justifies. You know that. And my sister. Your sister is not your responsibility to save. You are not God. Cannot control her life. Cannot prevent your choices. But I can stop his. The phrase came out cold, definitive. I sighed. I felt the tiredness of 32 fall over me. How many times have I tried to save someone from yourself? How many times were the words enough? You can, I agreed, but it shouldn't. And deep down you know that. That's why it's here. That's why it came in the middle of the night to look for an empty confessional. Pause. You don't want permission. You want someone to stop you. Someone who takes this choice from your hands. He didn't answer, but I saw his hands shaking. And I can't do that. I completed. Nin, I can. This choice is yours, and it will be yours forever. Silence. He was sitting there for long minutes, just breathing, existing in that space between the decision and the act, between thought and action. Finally, he got up. I heard the wooden bank ranger. I saw his silhouette moving through the grid. Thanks, Father, he said with an empty voice, for listening to me. Wait, I called before he left. He stopped. It turned slightly. This list on your phone? I continued. The 143 names. Are you going to erase? Silence. I don't know. And the surgery? In 5 days, will you be there? Longer silence. I don't know either. And then he said something that froze me. But I know if I go, and if I do, you can't tell anyone. Confession confidentiality, right? I felt a knot in my throat. Right, I confirmed in a low voice. What is said here, is here. He nodded. Once, and then it started to turn around. My son, I called again. He stopped. There is one thing you need to understand. If you do this, if you really let this man die, you won't be saving your sister. You will be getting lost. Pause. And when you get lost completely, there will be no confessional in the world that can bring you back. He stood, still, for long seconds. And then, without looking back, he whispered, maybe I'm already lost, and left. But I heard his footsteps echoing through the side corridor of the church, firm, decided, like when it entered. The side door creaked, opened, closed, and then silence, absolute silence. I was sitting in the confessional for a while I can't measure. It could be 10 minutes. It could be an hour. The smell of burnt wax still hovered in the air. The weak light of the tabernacle continued to flutter, but something had changed. The weight. I always carry the weight of confessions. It is part of the work, of the call, but that weight was different, because it was not just about the past. It was about the future, about something that hasn't happened yet, but I knew that it was going to happen. In 5 days, that man was going to enter an operating room, and a doctor was going to be by the table, a few inches from an open heart, and I was going to have to choose. He spoke like routine, but his breath denounced fear. The phrase of the mini-historian has returned to my mind. He had spoken with a technical coldness, as if describing a medical procedure, but his body had delivered everything. The fear, the doubt, the internal war between what he wanted to do and what was still left of humanity in it, admitted to letting lives out for their own choice. It was not an accident. It was no failure. It was a choice, deliberate, calculated, and he was about to do it again, or not. Because the truth is, I don't know. I don't know what he did. I can't know. The confession of confession holds me, gagged me. It turns me into a guardian of a secret that can mean life or death, and this is the burden I carry. I got up from the confessional. My legs were numb, my heavy body. I walked to the altar. The church was empty, cold. The shadows in the columns looked longer, darker. I knelt before the tabernacle. I joined my hands, and for the first time in many years, I couldn't pray. The words did not come. Why could I ask for guidance when I already knew the answer? How could you ask for peace when you had failed to prevent something that might be prevented? I was there, on your knees, in silence, only existing in that space between faith and impotence. And then I thought of his sister, in the woman who tried to kill herself twice. That still carries the scars. Who calls at 3 a.m. crying the name of a man who destroyed her? I thought of the brother, in law, in the man who abandoned her, who laughed at her pain, who said she should have died. And now I was going to enter an operating room trusting that doctors would do everything to save it. And I thought of the doctor, in the man who spent 15 years saving lives, who took an oath, who dedicated his entire life to prevent deaths. And that was now divided between oath and revenge. 3 lives, intertwined, attached to a node that cannot be undone. And I was just a witness, a guardian of secrets, a cassock, man who could do nothing but carry the weight. I left the confessional with the feeling that some decisions weigh more than any scalpel. The phrase finally became real, because I had left, and the weight was there, solid, undeniable, growing every second, because a scalpel cuts meat, bone, tissue, but decisions cut souls, and the scars that let never heal completely. On the following days were strange. I tried to continue with the routine, masses, confessions, visits to the sick, but my mind was always coming back to that at night, for that man, for those words, 5 days, I told, mentally, obsessively, Wednesday, 5th, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday would be the day, the surgery, and I didn't know if I should pray for success or for failure, because any result would be a tragedy. If the brother-in-law survived, the sister might kill herself, and the doctor would carry the guilt of letting her die. If the brother-in-law died, the doctor would become a killer, and the guilt would consume him until nothing left. There was no way out. There was no happy ending, only impossible choices and inevitable consequences. On Monday, I couldn't get out of the church. I was there, sitting in the front seat, looking at the cross, waiting. I didn't know what. Maybe a sign, maybe some news, perhaps just confirmation that something had happened. But nothing came, no connection, no visit, no news, and in the following days, not either. Weeks passed, months, and I never knew. I never knew if he entered that room, if it was beside the table. He looked at that open heart and decided. I never knew if the brother-in-law survived, if you died, if you had complications. I never knew if the sister is still alive, tried again, if finally got peace or end, and I never knew if the doctor kept the list, went out, continued to wait, hoping more names would appear, more opportunities, more choices, because he never came back, never returned to the confessional, never came back to me, and I couldn't look for it. I couldn't ask. I could not seek answers. Confidentiality holds me, and it will arrest me forever. Sometimes when I'm alone in the sacristy organizing the vestments, I wonder, did he do it? Did you let that man die? Or is it in the last second, when he had his hand a few inches from that open heart, he remembered the oath? Did you remember? And you chose to save instead of letting you die? I don't know. And this is the heaviest part, because the non-knowing is a prison, silent torture that has no end. Bayar Fleister today, when I look at that confessional, I still feel the weight of that night. I still see his silhouette through the grid. I still hear his voice saying, Father, I was the one who decided who lived and who died. And I wonder, how many doctors are there loading secret lists? How many nurses, paramedics, people in power positions on other people's lives, who have also decided to become judges, executors? How many deaths in hospitals were really accidental, and how many were choices? I don't know, and this doubt haunts me more than any confession I've ever heard, because within this confessional, I am guardian of truths that should never be said. I am a tomb of secrets that will die with me, but this secret is still alive, because as long as I don't know what happened, it is simultaneously in all states. It happened. It didn't happen. The man died. The man lived. The doctor killed. The doctor saved. And I carry all these possible future with me, like ghosts, as invisible weights that will never be relieved. I left the confessional with the feeling that some decisions weigh more than any scalpel, and that feeling never passed, because scalpels cut, cure, save, but decisions define who we are and who we become, and that doctor, that man who entered a cold night with a list of 143 names, he had to decide who he was, savior or killer, and I will never know which one he chose to be. That night I closed the door of the confessional, I locked the church, and I walked back home parish with the weight of a secret that never dies. His words still echo in my mind. Every night, when I close my eyes, I was the one who decided who lived and who died. And that phrase, this phrase chases me, to this day,